Hello everybody, Cone Dodger here. Welcome back to Automation. We're continuing on our American Engine Recreation series today, and we're going to tackle a pretty varied group of engines. We're going to continue on with the modular V8s, the Ford engines. So we're going to first start off with the current hot shoe. The talk of the muscle car world is the 5.0 Coyote motor. And it is the newest version of the modular V8, so it uses the same factory to produce it. It's the same machining, it goes through the same assembly, but they did everything they possibly could to squeeze out LS style power, the LS3 or LS9 kind of power, out of a smaller V8. And they do that with just perfecting what they were already started to do with the previous modular V8. So for this one, we're going to go for a 92.2 by a 92.7, so a very square setup. And that gives you a 302 cubic inch motor or a 5.0 liter. We're going to go for a cast iron crank. It has, now this is very confusing. Everything I've read talking about the connecting rods, they are forged, but they are a powdered steel forging process. So it's not a true forged connecting rod. But we don't really have a whole lot of option there. This is a high revving motor, so I feel pretty confident selecting the forged H-beams here. So that is that. We do know that it has hyper-eutectic cast pistons, and that I am going to up the quality on the bottom end to about a 5, because they're using pretty advanced materials to get this bottom end to survive. Okay, so what you have is dual overhead cam setup, 4 valves per cylinder, aluminum heads. Compression ratio is 11 to 1. Cam profile for this guy, we're going to keep in that 40-ish range. I'll just drop it a little bit. But we do have VVT on both the intake and exhaust cams. No VVL, so we're not getting too crazy. But this is still, VVT is a great feature. It basically allows the cams to advance or retard their timing independently. So there's not a separate set of lobes on the cams for a higher profile, but it can adjust the cam timing per the conditions, per how much power the motor needs to make, or it can try and save some fuel by, cutting it back a little bit. We are still using a multi-point EFI setup. Now we're starting to look a little bit more like this. The Coyote motor has a very similar intake manifold to this. We're going to put a standard intake on this guy, and we're going to say we're going to run it on premium. This motor, and most current motors, the ECU can tune the engine per what kind of fuel you put in it. But to get the numbers that Ford is claiming this motor can make, you need to have the octane there to support it, and they are most likely using 91 octane for that. And this premium unleaded 90.3 as close as we have here. So I'm going to put this up to a 13.2. Since we don't have direct injection, we can't lean it out too much. I'm going to leave the ignition timing at 50. That rev limit, as I said earlier, pretty high, especially for a 5-liter V8, is 7,000 RPM. We don't have short cast headers. We actually have tubular headers this time. And let's see, tools with a 2.5-inch exhaust is more than enough. We'll say a regular 3-flow cat, and we'll go reverse flow with none. So we'll say it's a pretty loud motor, and they usually are from the factory. Okay, so I think that about covers it. We'll see how close we can get to 412 horsepower at 6,500 RPM and 390 foot-pounds of torque at 4,200 RPM. Well, the chart looks good. Let's see. Let's look at 390. Looks like we're a little short there. Overall, not bad, but we're pretty short on both the horsepower and the torque. As I expected, bottom end part is reaching its RPM limit. The only thing I can do is increase the quality on the bottom end. This is what it has. I know it says max RPM is average on this. I don't know what to tell you there. Clearly they're doing it. They're constructing these connecting rods out of a powdered metal that they know is strong enough. Everything I read says it is strong enough for an NA motor, but it would not suffice for a forced induction motor. So that's the extent of what I know, and they are certainly making it work, so that's what we're going to stick with. But more importantly, we were not making nearly enough power, so I'm going to go up a little bit on the cam profile. We were 89.7 on fuel out of 90.3, which means I don't have a ton of wiggle room in ignition timing, but I could jump that up to the premium super unleaded because I think we're going to need it. And I'm also going to put a performance style intake on there. This is a performance motor, so I would expect them to have a performance intake as well. Alright, let's see if we can get a little closer. 363 torque, still a little short. 393 horsepower, we're getting there. Let's see how our octane looks. 90.1. I'm still having that issue. I will throw this all the way to 15, which is going to throw the cost just like completely out of the window, but I just want to see if that would keep it from doing that. Ew. How did you let me do that? Ugly chrome valve covers. No. This motor you can't even see. It is all covered up. Yeah, we'll say that. So we'll just leave it black, because that is about as much as you could possibly see that motor. Clearly that's going to fix all our problems. That was the problem all along. Let's get this timing up. We're going to go all the way to 85 and see how that treats us. .377 torque, it's much better. 405 horsepower. Not quite there just yet. Let's see. 92.1, and that's still an issue, so we can bring that back down because clearly it doesn't matter. 92.1. We still have a little room there with the ignition timing. I'll use some of that, and I'm going to bring the cam profile up as well. Let's just do a quick test here. 425, overshot it. It's probably that cam profile that did that. 417, so let's just bring that down until we get the numbers. 412. Okay, so we got the horsepower about right. 412 at 6,700. That's pretty close. 378 torque, a little short, but not dramatically. So I'm okay with that, and I think that is going to do it. That's not all we're going to hear from this motor, because there are variants of it starting to pop up. Because you can't just have one base engine and put that in every variant of the car. Obviously this motor's primarily found in the Mustang. You gotta have a high performance version of it as well, and typically that has been a supercharged variant. Instead, this time around, they have produced what is called the Roadrunner, and it is a more aggressive cammed out motor that has stronger internals and a higher redline. Yes, a higher redline, which is going to be an issue. But it uses that to produce more power than the old supercharged motors made. So let's make those changes. We're going to go up to a 50, I'm going to say a 55 cam profile. And we have forged pistons, which means we go from having an average RPM to a high RPM. So we could possibly see this motor start to stay together. It does have the same forged H-beam style connecting rods. It could be a weak point in this design. It could completely blow up. We will see. The RPM limit is going to go up to 7,500, and I read stuff that people have surpassed that and have reached well into the nearly 8,000 RPM range with this motor, and it has done just fine. So clearly they have done something pretty special with the bottom end and the top end of this motor. Let's see if this Roadrunner variant can make 444 horsepower and 380 foot-pounds of torque. I don't have the RPMs that it did that at, but we're going to guess it's going to be pretty similar to the previous. Already sounds better. So you notice we actually have less torque to make. Brand we made it with ease. That's because it's a little bit more of a cammed out motor. Actually, we just went a little north of what our goal was. So let's see. Yep, still having that problem. It's not dramatically hurting the MTBF, so we'll let it slide for now. We'll increase that up to like 11. So I think what I'm going to do is take maybe 2 clicks off that cam profile. For 40, that's too much. 444, perfect. So there we go. Now we have a Coyote Roadrunner. A little weird that they use that name. That's typically, you know, a Mopar kind of name. And you Mopar guys out there, I hear you. I know you want to see some of those motors as well. They are coming. That's the next group of motors we're going to tackle. Alrighty, so let's save that one. And now we're going to change gears completely. We've been doing all of these Ford engines. They've all been V8s. We're going to do a Ford 4-cylinder. And there's a good reason for that. I'll explain it when we get there. But for now, let's start a new engine. It's inline 4. Not inline 6, inline 4. Then a little bit of block. The bore is 79 by 81.4. So that looks weird, 97.4 cubic inches. That's not entirely, well, that's not something you would ever hear. Nobody ever refers to a 4-cylinder by its cubic inches. But what we have is the Ford EcoBoost 1.6. This is the motor that is found in the Ford Focus ST. And the reason I want to do it is because it's highly suggested and rumored that a variant of this motor is going to end up in the next Mustang, replacing or possibly just adding to the lineup the current V6. So I feel as though it's a pretty darn important motor to make. It's a big change. Ford has in the past, back in like the early 80s Fox body era, they put some 4-cylinders in Mustangs, and it didn't go over all that well. They even made a turbo one, which kind of did go well. You know, it was the SHO. It was really different, really cool, and they have started to have a little bit better of a following today. So sounds like they're maybe trying to rekindle that spirit in the 2015 Mustang. So we have the same kind of setup with a forged H-beam connecting rod and a protected cast piston. We have a dual overhead cam setup, 4 valves per cylinder, on an aluminum head. The compression is 10.0 to 1, which is pretty darn high for a boosted motor. Cam profile, I'll leave it 40. It does have VVT on both camshafts. I mean, no VVL, and a pretty mundane looking valve cover, but in a bright color because those Ford Focus STs all seem to be in bright colors. So that'll be our signature ST thing there, the yellow valve cover. So here's something we haven't been able to click in a while: turbocharger. Let's see if I remember how to use these. It is a ball bearing turbo, and it has a air-to-air medium-sized intercooler, pretty good size, and that looks about right. The actual compressor turbine and AR ratio of the turbo, I don't know. I'm going to select a performance turbo on here, and we're going to see how close it is. There's a very high PSI turbo at 17 is the stock boost level. Now 17 is the stock boost level, but it actually gives you the option to overboost and go up all the way up to 20. So if we need to, we will use that to make the power we need to. Injection, here's another thing we haven't done in a while, or maybe ever, is direct injection. So that's direct injection on a single throttle body setup. It's a performance intake. It runs on Premium 93 is what they got the numbers with, so that is what we will use. We'll get that down to pretty rich, 13.3 because it's direct injected. We'll give it a good timing map. We should have plenty of octane to work with. And our RPM limit is 6,500. Okay, so exhaust. Obviously we just have the short cast for that, and that's pretty realistic as far as turbo setups go. We are looking for over 250 horsepower, so we will need that 2.5-inch piping. Do a 3-way cat. Just a regular reverse flow muffler. Just a single one. It's got a turbo, and it tends to be a little bit of a muffler itself, so you don't have to put too much muffling into these engines. So let's see if we can make 252 horsepower at 5,500 RPM and 270 foot-pounds at 2,700 RPM. So a pretty low torque peak there. That chart did not go as high as we needed, so there's our first clue. Very late, which leads me to believe that maybe I need to adjust that turbo just a little bit. We also ran into some knock. That's surprising, but it has been a while since I messed with the turbo stuff, so I could have been a little hasty with that ignition timing. So I just want to do a quick test and see what that does with the chart. Gets us a little bit more into what the range we would expect to see, but I do want to work on that turbo a little bit. So let's go to the aspiration, and you can see it's got quite a jog up there because we're going all the way to 16.9. So what would happen? Could we get that to build a little quicker? Not really, because we don't have a whole lot of displacement. It's a very small displacement engine. Let's see what this does. It gives us a little bit earlier. Even though it falls off late, we're only revving to 6,500, so that's about here. So we can go there, and it gives us a little smoother curve. So let's see what that does for us. I'm going to go up a little bit on the quality here. So what that did was that we actually lost a little bit of power, but it smoothed out the torque curve. The power curve. The torque curve is doing all sorts of crazy things now. It's falling like a rock after it peaks. So let me go back. Let's see if maybe I went a little too far here. Go up a little bit on the turbine size. Let's see. Pretty similar there. So that would mean I would need, let's try and put a little bit more cam into it. A little bit more ignition timing to try and get these numbers somewhere where we need to be. 205, we're still pretty darn far off. Now, if we stepped up to a race turbo, you could see there's no way that would work because it would build so late, it would be almost useless on the street. So this is actually a really good setup here. It builds nice and early and stays solid. The problem is we're putting so much boost on it that it's losing its efficiency, so that is a problem. So we're going to go all the way up to 18. Again, we can go up to 20, need be. I don't think there's anything I can really do here to make that better, but we'll see. Okay, 221, 216. Getting there, but not quite. Okay, so I'm closing in on it. I'm gonna go ahead and try and put all 20 psi on there. Odds are, if by the factory you were able to push it to 20 psi, they used that to get the numbers for the SAE test. So no real crime in using that, but trying to get this engine to survive and have a decent looking power curve with that is a little bit of a challenge. Okay, let's see. Probably not going to be high enough. We may be running into some knock issues. See, it didn't sound like it was hitting knock. 92.1, we still got a little room there, that's good. So that means we can give it a little bit of ignition timing back. Let's do a quick test. A little bit more. And I'm going to go a little bit more in the cam profile as well. Okay, and now it's starting to look like we're getting somewhere. We're still pretty short. I'm gonna go all the way up to 60 on that cam profile, which is kind of hurting our torque. We were supposed to make 270 foot-pounds of torque, which is pretty unbelievable for a motor this small. But as much as I increase that cam profile, it's really staying very torquey, which is encouraging. So I'm going to go even crazier there. Okay, test that. 245, 245. We seem to be kind of flattening out there. But we're lowering the AKI, the fuel octane, so that means 92.6. We can put a little bit more ignition timing in, which was a little too much, but it gets our numbers close. 93.2. So now we're stuck at kind of 245, 245. Let me fiddle around with it a little bit more and see if I can't get that to be a little better. Alrighty, so we have hit the numbers, sort of. Torque number I don't think I'm going to be able to accomplish. The horsepower though, pretty much dead on. So we slowly climb up to 252. So 246 foot-pounds, a little bit less than quoted, but these motors are extremely difficult to build. I had to do quite the trickery to get there. Let's see. I went with a straight-through muffler, and it was still not very loud. Let's see. Loudness 45, that's moderately acceptable. The catalytic converter went through for a high flow 3-way. Went up to a 2 3/4 inch exhaust. What else did we do? Let's see, up to a 66 in the cam profile as well. But those things got us there, and it is that kind of motor. You know, it's a very, very high-tech, pushing the boundaries kind of motor. They're really trying to prove that these turbo setups can work, and can work in a way that will give you fuel mileage and performance. And that is why they want to produce a 2.3 liter version of this motor that makes about 280 horsepower is what they want to produce. And that would be quite the something. When you think about it, 280 horsepower, a modular V8 was making that, you know, when it first started getting produced in the Mustang. So to have that kind of performance out of a 4-cylinder turbo setup is pretty impressive, because I guarantee you it's going to be dramatically more fuel efficient than a modular V8 ever was. So it's something to look forward to in the future and see if maybe the second try to put a 4-cylinder Mustang is more successful than the first attempt. But I think that's going to do it for today. Thank you for following me through this little crazy journey that has been Ford. I have learned a lot. As I mentioned, next time we're going to move on to some Chrysler products, Mopars, Dodges, etc. And I look forward to that. So as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.